After sunset, the wailing of people subsided a little. My father and grandfather regained some composure, and my friend returned to his home. After I finished bathing, grandfather told me to go and wash up as well. But when Dad came back after his shower, "This blood, it won't come off," he said in a low, muffled voice. "What?" I stood up abruptly. "It feels though it's become part of my skin color." I checked with my friend, and he told me the exact same thing. Outside, everyone had been drenched in rain of blood that now had bodies stained completely red. "This is a curse from the Almighty," my grandfather said. "But there is one thing I don't understand. If these people were buried in the ground, how did they end up in the sky? Are those actually real bodies? Maybe we don't know for sure. But if those bodies up there are real, it means the graves must be empty. Yes, I think I should check, just once." I went to the graveyard, and the scene there was hauntingly different. People were frantically digging up graves, while others just stared blankly into empty pits. I heard one man screaming at another, "Where is my mother? How could she have gone up there?" I had an axe in my hand. I wasn't sure if digging would even help, but for my own peace of mind, I started to dig. Even after digging deep, there was no body to be found. I returned home, and seeing my fallen face, my grandfather didn't say a word. After a while, he wondered aloud what would happen to all those bodies now. When suddenly the earth began to shake, over and over. The screams of the people erupted once again. I opened the window, and bodies were raining from the sky. We rushed downstairs. I picked up my grandmother's body, and my friend picked up his grandfather's, and we brought them back into our homes. Because of the lack of blood in their veins and the impact of falling from such a great height, my grandmother and Ahad's grandfather were in a terrible state. God rained down the blood and now has returned to the bodies. They must be buried once again, my grandfather said through his tears. As night fell, the entire city moved towards the cemetery, carrying their dead. Everywhere, people were weeping, as if a fresh start had just occurred in every home. I was there in a total state of shock, moving mechanically, like a cog in a machine. Finally, after burying them, we returned home. We couldn't sleep at all that night, but at last a small sense of peace finally reached our hearts. The sun rose the next day. I thought people were still weeping for their loved ones because I had stepped outside and bodies were scattered everywhere once again. "We brought the bodies back home. Come on, let's go bury them," I said to my friend. "No, he is telling me something," he said, staring at his grandfather. "What?" "He wants to become a part of me." "What on earth are you talking about?" I snapped. And my father came up behind. "No, there is no point in burying them." "Then what will we do?" I asked. "We must make them a part of ourselves," my grandfather said from behind, coughing. "Are you all going mad?" I screamed. My friend took his grandmother and went back into his house, and I just walked out. I heard the sound of people laughing inside. When I went closer, I saw them dismembering the corpses as if they were livestock. "What are you doing?" I asked. A man in the crowd replied, "Now my father and I will become one." "What?" I backed away in horror. This was happening everywhere. I ran back to the building, only to hear a sound of a meat cleaver echoing from my friend's house. I knocked on the door and saw my friend cutting up his grandfather while his family stood by watching calmly. "Hey, what are you doing? How can you do that to your own grandfather?" "I'm doing this for him. There's no point in burying them," he said, pausing his work to look at me. "But we can find another way. It's better if we cremate them." "Do you think that works? I have friends who tried that. And do you know what? Their remains fell from the sky too." My head began to spin. I retreated to my own home. A strange smell was coming from the kitchen. When I went inside, I saw my dad boiling my grandmother's legs in a pot of water. "What? Have you all lost your minds?" "This way the skin comes off easily," he said casually. "Why do we even eat this? We're humans. How can we eat another human?" "Can't you hear your grandmother's voice?" my grandfather said, entering the kitchen. "What voice?" "She wants this. She wants us to eat her so we can finally have peace." "This is all nonsense. You all have all gone mad," I screamed. Ran into my room and locked the door. I checked social media, and it was the same everywhere. I didn't leave my room for a week. I didn't touch a morsel of food. My mouth began to water involuntarily, and my stomach was cramping from hunger. I was desperate for anything to eat, but there was nothing but corpses everywhere. When I finally stepped out of my room, Grandfather was lying in his bed. My dad was sitting there holding his hand, and my friend was standing beside him. Both had their heads bowed in grief. "What happened to Grandfather?" I rushed to his side. "Grandfather, what's wrong?" "My time is coming to an end, but I don't want to go up there." "No, nothing will happen to you. I'm here." I grabbed his hand. "Son, I wanted to live a little longer, but it seems my journey ends here. I just want to ask of you one thing." "Anything, Grandfather. Tell me." "Don't bury me. I don't want to keep falling after death, and I don't want my blood to be sucked away." My eyes widened. "Just eat me. Make me a part of you." Hearing this, my mind went numb. I couldn't say a word. Grandfather passed away. That night, everything that shouldn't happen was happening. Usually people come to offer condolences, but here people gathered for a feast made of my grandfather. Dad came into my room with a plate. I noticed the red stain on his body had faded, leaving behind only a faint tint. He said, "Eat this, my son. Even if you don't want to, please, don't refuse your grandfather's final wish." Because I loved my grandfather so much, I took the plate. Every night my dad was in charge of putting me to bed. He would help me brush my teeth, and then would tuck me into my nice warm bed. Then he would tell me a story. Every night it was the same story. The story of Bosco and Billy. I had lots of books in my room, as my mother would read to me throughout the day. But Dad would never read any of those books. He would always tell me the same story. I always assumed that either the story had to come from a book, but my father had told it so many times that he didn't need to read from the book anymore, or that it was a story he was told as a child. I always enjoyed the story of Bosco and Billy. I always found it would help me go to sleep. Usually I would be almost asleep by the end of the story, and would sometimes recite most of it with Dad. For some reason, probably because I heard it every night for years, the story stuck with me, and even to this day, I still remember all the words to this story. The story in its entirety is as follows. Billy the bear was an ordinary bear with an ordinary life. But he had a small friend named Bosco who got him into strife. Most of the time, Bosco would behave, but sometimes he acted out. Billy tried to keep him in line, but sometimes he'd break out. Like one time, Bosco was hungry and decided he would steal food. Billy tried to stop him and explained to Bosco that stealing is rude. But Bosco didn't listen. He stole the food anyway and took it to his hidden spot and hid it away. Bosco took the food to a large oak tree that was in the woods. There he gathered the food inside, and that's where he hid his goods. Billy never found the stolen food. It is still hidden to this day. Bosco wishes it was never found. He hopes and he prays. Billy is kind, and Bosco is a little bit silly. And now that's the story of Bosco and Billy. Now the story seems innocent enough, and I always thought it was a little cute about two bears. But after recent events, I now know it's a lot more sinister than it first appears. My dad passed away a few years ago, and it took a toll on all of us, especially my mom. She became a little bit reclusive after my father passed, and I didn't see her as often because she shut herself off from others. I spent a long time trying to create a relationship with my mother again, and slowly, over the course of a couple years, I did manage to reconnect with her. Things weren't as they once were, but she did invite me over once a week for a cup of coffee. During these hour-long visits, we would sit in the kitchen and talk about times gone by, about my childhood, about my time at school, and about all the other good times we had together. The one subject that didn't come up, however, was my father. I think the pain was still too raw for my mother to talk about him. On one of the weekly visits, though, I thought I would try and mention my father, as I felt it might do Mom some good to talk about him. I decided to mention the story that he would tell me every night. Do you remember the story that Dad used to tell me before bed? The story of Billy and Bosco? I hesitated as I asked, not knowing how Mom would react to the mention of her late husband. Mom looked up for her cup of coffee that she was drinking. She looked confused, maybe because it was the first time he had been mentioned for a number of years, or maybe because she didn't know what I was talking about. No, I don't remember that story, she replied. You had a lot of books, so I can't remember all of them. I was a bit surprised by this. Dad told it to me every night, so I would have thought she would remember it. I then went on to explain it wasn't a book. It was a story that would recite, without reading it off a page because he knew it so well. I thought your father would read you a different book each night, she said, sounding confused. That's what he always told me, anyway. I thought this was especially strange because he never read me one of my books, and I would have thought that my own mother would have known this. What was the story about? She asked me. It was about two bears, one named Billy and one named Bosco. I was about to continue to explain the story when my mom suddenly interrupted me. Did you just say the bear's name was Bosco? She asked me, sounding quite serious. Yeah, that's right, his name was Bosco, I replied. That's strange, Mom said. She had a look on her face that looked like she was trying to remember something. Your father used to tell me about a friend that he used to have named Bosco. Mom continued. He used to say that Bosco would get him in a lot of trouble when he was younger. I never met this Bosco, which your dad said was a good thing. He also said that he only met up with Bosco once or twice after we met. And then your father told me he was no longer going to see Bosco. He said he finally got rid of him. I was always curious as to who he was. I never seen any photos of him or any evidence that he existed. Now that I think about it, it is strange that he told you a story containing a character named Bosco. Mom stopped talking for a second, and I didn't know how to respond. Then she looked at me and asked, Do you remember the story? Can you tell it to me? I recited the entire story to her. She listened to the whole tale without changing her expression. She took it all in and then asked, An oak tree? Are you sure that Bosco hid the food in an old oak tree in the woods? Yeah, it was definitely an old oak tree. Why's that? I asked her, sensing that something wasn't quite right. It's just that on mine and your father's first day, he took me to an old oak that was inside Shelton Woods, only a 10-minute drive from here, she responded. He told me that it was lucky for me that Bosco hadn't decided to interrupt their date. Then she stopped talking and stared at the wall behind where I was sitting. I think it's time for you to go now. I'm sorry, she told me with a hint of sadness in her voice. I thought that maybe it was for the best that I left. I got up and gave her a small hug, which she didn't even seem to notice. Then I collected my things and headed out the front door. I got into my car and began to drive home. On the way home, however, the thought of old oak tree and Bosco began to fill my head. I couldn't escape these thoughts. I didn't know what it all meant, if it meant anything at all. I don't know what compelled me, but I had to visit the Shelton Woods and find this old oak tree. I turned my car around and headed in the direction of the woods. 15 minutes later, I found myself standing at the edge of the woods. I took a step forward and entered them. I didn't know exactly where this oak was, but I was determined to find it. I explored the woods for about 10 minutes before I saw it. Standing in front of me was this huge oak tree, its branches extending high up into the sky. I walked over to the base of the tree. A sense of fear started to overcome me. Something didn't feel right. It felt like something terrible had happened here. And I saw that the dirt there looked slightly different than the rest of the dirt in the woods. I don't know why I did this, but I bent down and began to dig in the dirt. The police said if I hadn't started digging, they would have probably never found them. There were 4 bodies in total, all young women, around the age of 24. All of them had been dead for over 30 years. It was undeniable. They were all murdered and buried under the tree. The DNA testing was so clear. My father was responsible for the killings. Sometimes he managed to keep all of this hidden for years. He never told me, he never told anyone. The only clues he gave were through my bedtime story, which I think was his way of confessing. The only thing I'm not sure of now is, who is Bosco? Maybe my father and Bosco are the same person, or maybe he really did have a friend with that name. I don't think we'll ever know. I don't think I want to know. Hey guys, Autistic Reaper here. Hope you guys enjoyed the episodes. Please feel free to like, comment, and share, as well as support the channel by subscribing. Thank you so much, and goodbye for now.